What's your let's get the frick out of here story? Possibly NSW replies. I was out in the bluff country of the upper Mississippi with my dog in the early winter. Was at the base of a cliff and came across a hole about 10 inches across that had some moist, warmish air coming out. I cave sometimes and got excited at the prospect of finding a new, potentially live one. Took my dog home and came back the next day with a helmet, headlamp, and general caving gear. After kicking out the entrance so it was wide enough for me to crawl in, I proceeded through sort of an upward crawl space 1-2 featuring tall, about 6 featuring, and it opened up into a small chamber, and when I shined my headlamp across the floor it was covered in tiny glints. They were the eyes of rattlesnakes. I mean, hundreds of rattlesnakes. I had stumbled across one of their winter dens. I slowly backed out and got the frick out of there. TLDR. Thought I found a new live cave. Came across rattlesnake hibernation den. Till Indiana Jones is a redditor. Went to Ocean City MD and there was a full rising moon in the east and wanted to see it, so set my alarm for 1 AM to watch it over the ocean. You know, the time of the year from the heat where the moon looks about 6x as big as it rises, and it's blood red, well, really dark orange. Should have taken that as an omen. As I was walking I heard a muffled scream, or something, behind one of the umbrella boxes changing stations. I sneak up and some guys were trying to rape some girl. I thought it was animals fighting. I had no idea what I started to see. I heard them say shut up or we're gonna cut you, and one had his pants down and had her pinned with the 2 other guys. I don't know why I did it, but I picked up what I guess was a piece of the post fencing and started beating the crap out of the guys. Since I was quiet, sand, and it was all to the heads and I was wearing dark colors, I guess I had them by surprise. Whack to each of their heads, and so hard that nobody even gave an alert to what was happening. Just falling over. 1 2 3 all fell down. I was actually scared I killed one of them or something, but he was moaning. The girl looked up at me and I said come on, we gotta run now, and we did. As they were getting up, I guess they did. They sounded pretty angry, but I knew I really hit the frick out of the first guy. We pumped as hard as we could on the sand and jumped a fence and rattled some doors and ran into someone who woke up and called the police. Her father thanked me. She told me that they had guns, or said they did. She never saw one, just a knife. Turns out her dad was some Muslim priest and she and him had got into an argument, so she walked to cool off. Her dad went the other way down the beach to look for her, and she ran into some drunk college kids. TLDR. Snuck up and beat up some guys trying to rape the girl, and she and I booked it out of there faster than lightning. I am lucky I lived. You're a hero, dude. My most recent one was a few months ago. I had just moved up to where I currently live and was out at a party with my roommates. I don't know anyone here, so I was on my best behavior. I walk into the kitchen and this kid sprays soda all over me. I keep my cool and walk outside for a smoke. The kid ends up walking outside to smoke a cigarette as well. I tell the kid that I thought it was fricked up that he sprayed soda all over me, but said don't worry, I know we're all drunk. I laughed it off and jokingly told him that I'll just get him back to make up for it. He apparently took it the wrong way and started waving a gun at me, then put one in the chamber. I looked at one of my roommates and gave a holy crap look. I tried to play it off by saying I was going to get another drink. I walked inside, gathered everyone I showed up with, called the cab and left immediately. What a mental freak. A few years ago some friends and I were out drinking in downtown Toronto where we all live. We were in a cab going from one bar to another to meet some other friends. As the cab driver pulls up to our destination, my friend, who's sitting in the driver's side back seat, opens his door just as a streetcar, sort of like a mini train for public transit, like they have in San Francisco, is going by. The front corner of the streetcar takes the cab door clean off its hinges. The cab driver and streetcar driver both get out and start screaming at each other. No one seems to realize it was actually my friend's fault, so we drop the cab fare plus a generous tip onto the driver's seat and quietly exit through the opposite side. It was my late junior year of high school and I was at another school's house party. It was all going pretty well except there were a lot of people in the backyard. Eventually one of the neighbors that are family friends come over. It's a husband and wife, both in their 40s, in full-on suburban warfare mode. Put the ganja and alcohol down. We called the cops, they are on their way. At the time I was on probation for a minor possession charge, so all I needed to hear was cops and I was gone. I left through the front of the house, running like the devil was chasing me. I was out of the house, down the street, and in my car before anybody else had really even moved. I brought my car back to the house to get my friends, but the neighbors were blocking the backyard entrance. Impatient and nervous, I did the honors. Frick these people, they can't make you stay. Let's get the frick out of here. At that moment one of the friends I came with, who was being blocked by the neighbor, decided he had enough. All I see is him come flying through the backyard entrance and knock the pee out of the guy blocking the exit. That opened the floodgates. In about 15 seconds the house was cleared. I'm pulling away as the kid who owns the house decides to say frick it and bail. I decide to give him a fighting chance and pop my trunk. At the time I had an old Ford Explorer. He jumps into the trunk, slams the door behind him, screams go, 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 and we were gone. I decide to give him a fighting chance and pop my trunk. You are a true hero. I was out for drinks with a friend of mine and a guy from work. The guy from work had a hard time controlling his drinking, so by the time we got to the sake place I told him he was cut off, falling over drunk. At one point he goes to the bathroom, and when he comes back he is clutching his hand for some reason. I'm like, Mike, what happened to your hand? His answer, I hurt it somehow. I may have broken the sink too. Oh crap. I like this place. Cheap beer, sake, and appetizers. So I go check the bathroom. No damage. Q. This place is one of those tiny Asian places with two one-person bathrooms, male and female. I sit back down and say, Mike, guy's room looks fine. Maybe you damaged the faucet somehow. His answer, no. I was in the girl's room. So I check the girl's bathroom. Devastation. Apparently he slipped on the wet floor, caught himself on the sink, and ripped this entire beautiful porcelain sink, the kind where the water runs around and circles before it gets to your hands, off of the wall. All that's left is a glued on cross section of a sink on the wall, and a pile of porcelain pieces on the floor with a metal faucet sticking up out of them. Bonus. There is blood everywhere. Even the toilet looks pink. In the words of my friend, it looked like NYC was less 1H that night. Apparently he cut his hand on the sink and it sprayed everywhere as he fell. I tend to Mike's hand, while my other friend starts discreetly mopping up the blood trail that leads from the girl's room to our table with his shoes. A pool of blood is forming under Mike. Meantime the owners realize what has happened, and upon seeing this disaster what do? Nothing. Pretend nothing happened. No cops. Just mops. I immediately demanded the check, citing as my reason for leaving that I no longer feel well. Half true. And I do not return to my favorite sake bomb place for months. TL. DR. Drunken co-worker destroys public bathroom creating bloody mess. I discreetly exit. Some friends and I left a club in Boston one night and were pretty well lubricated by this point. Two of my friends were running down the middle of the road looking for an open cab when one of them stops at a minivan and taps on the passenger side window. In the van were four large black men, which my friend slurringly asked to give us a ride. The guy in the passenger seat responded with "You but we roll hard." You roll hard. At this point my friend screams to me, "Yo, IT's cool, my N are gonna give you a ride." At that point I decided it was time to leave, so I grab my friend and tell him to keep walking when he yells, "But I wanna smoke crack with my N." Then I really decided it was time to leave. To lubricated can also mean drunk. At least, I sincerely hope so. When I was 16, I was at the mall with a friend of mine, who was telling me horrible stories about her friend. We turned a corner, just as I exclaimed, "That's disgusting," really loudly. All 100 pounds of me suddenly noticed a very tall, very overweight man, sitting on a bench, with his equally overweight child attached to one of those leashes they used to have. Well, he looks me right in the eye, and says, "What's disgusting?" and proceeds to stand up and come menacingly at me. I try to explain that it was the story my friend was talking about, but he was having none of it. I booked it out of there really quickly, and still felt really badly about the whole situation, as I could only imagine what he thought I had been talking about. This mental image made my day 100x better. When I was a dumb preteen kid, a friend and I were screwing around and decided it would be fun to throw eggs at cars. We positioned ourselves at the end of an alley that dead-ended on a small hill that overlooked a fairly busy street, but didn't connect to it. We figured it was a perfect spot, because we were higher up than the street, and a car couldn't get to us without going around the block. Plus, there weren't any street lights nearby. After hitting a few cars with eggs, we truly unleashed on one car. A couple of eggs in each hand. We probably hit the windshield with 4-5 eggs at once. That's when the red and blue lights on the roof of that car came on. Because there were no street lights nearby, we didn't realize it was a freaking cop car. We hauled butt while the cop car sped around the block trying to get to our alley. Luckily, my buddy's house was just down the alley, and we ducked inside before the cop found us. He circled the neighborhood for half an hour shining his spotlight into yards. TLDR, don't throw eggs at cop cars. My friend and I were on our way to a different town for some drinks with a friend of ours. It's a drive, probably like 45 minutes. Anyway, we were passing a joint back and forth by the time we hit the city limits and pulled up next to this guy driving an old RWD V8. You know the one I'm talking about. Brown, rust spots, big engine that's not quite in tune, but when you put it down the tires on the thing will still scream. It's about 11 p and we're parked at a four-way with woods behind us and the town is in front of us with two streets sitting perpendicular to us. Anyway, he looks over at us and revs the engine. I'm driving a Jeep, so I tap the gas and jokingly nod over at him like we're going to do this thing. Stoplight turns green and he hits it hard. I stay parked just watching him with my mouth open and the number still in my hand. Dude starts fishtailing all over the road. Goes really far right, over Corex left past the double yellow line, almost hits another car, which swerves out of his way, over Corex back over the double yellow line, hard, jumps the curb on the right side of the street and plows directly into a storefront's giant plate glass window. Glass just showered all over that car. Dude throws the car in reverse, spraying landscape bushes all over inside of the building he just inadvertently entered, backs into a street sign, then burns out down the road. The car that had swerved to avoid him whips a UI and chases after him as well. By then the light had turned red and I turned to my friend and honestly asked him if I had hallucinated the entire thing. He said no, that definitely happened. When we left our buddies at about 3 there were cops everywhere, taping off the building and digging around in the bushes. I thought about stopping and telling them I saw what happened but decided it wasn't worth possibly getting arrested. Took me a full minute to get through paragraph 3 and 4, taking breaks to laugh my butt off. A young 16-year-old me, invited to a house party in a nearby town. A nice place, but the party was populated by a bit more of an alternative crowd than the younger me had grown up with. There was a band playing terrible music in the living room, kids hitting up the pipes in the host's mother's bedroom, nowhere near enough room for all the folk that had decided it was the place to be that Friday evening. Eventually it all spilled out into the streets. A friend who had accompanied me that night is spotted being led by one of the local emo looking girls out onto the field across from the house. He was a perennial geek amongst geeks, this guy. This was not his style, but he liked her so we left him to it. We all knew he was about to get lucky, and we were happy for him, albeit in a field in the northwest of England. Ah, what a place to lose it. Bless I am. After the fact, we all meet up again upstairs passing around a joint and high-fiving. The next thing we know, music is off, folk are shouting, and footsteps are getting closer. Lots of them. It turned out the girl was supposed to be the lead singer of the band, who in turn happened to be the host, and one of her friends had decided she was being a little bit Door swings open, joint drops to the deck. We all turn in shock as a long-haired greasy black metal fan attempts to decimate each of us with his Ibanez. We pushed him to the ground, barged my way down the stairs and out of the front door. Having thought we were clear of danger now, we call a taxi to pick us up. Having been quiet for around 5 minutes we decided all is cool. Close call. In actual fact, the offended vocalist had spent his 5 minutes getting troops hunting pack together in a fashion I find reminiscent of Age of Empires army building. They spotted us walking down the road and decided to make chase. We spotted our taxi and decided to make haste. We made it just in time, safe in the taxi with the locks on door. The taxi driver saw my lips move but couldn't make out what I was saying over all the banging on the windows. He eventually clicked on. In that moment I was Jack F.ing Bauer screaming, "Get us the frick out of here." Edit. The town in question was a rather unheard of place called Colne, East Lancashire. You were a real bro to that guy, man. A lot of my friends would have just left me to be decimated, especially at 16 and stoned. Good guy, you. When I was 19, me and a couple friends decided to go to this bar that opened up not too far away. It was the kind of place that didn't card and we wanted a few drinks. We get there and one of the guys I was with was carrying a pocket knife. The bouncer told him he couldn't take it and so he left it with the girl at the front. Well, after an hour or so we start to realize just how shady this place is, so we decide to leave. As we are walking out, the guy realizes he needs to get his knife back, so he goes back inside. My other friend and I are sitting just outside the door waiting when we hear an argument break out about 20 feet away. After some shouting back and forth in Spanish between the parties, we hear gunshots. At that point we both run to my truck and duck behind the tire's engine. A few seconds later the other guy we were with shows up and we get the heck out. A few months later the whole place was shut down due to a police investigation involving gangs and people being chopped up in the basement. TLDR. Went to bar. Shots fired. Peaced the frick out. The last sentence tripled the WTF factor. It was 1981 to 1982, a cold night, and me and some punk friends went down to an abandoned movie theater in town. It wasn't a big Bijou style place, more like an old metal roofed building with a brick front. There was band playing there, illegally, because the movie theater still had power hookups. There were two main sections, the former theater lobby where everyone hung out and did drugs, and the actual theater part itself, where the band was playing. I never got to the theater part. I mean, I saw it when the double doors would open, where a band was playing and we had a mosh pit going. But I hung out with some friends near what used to be the concession stand. At some point, a common friend came to us, her head gashed and bleeding. "Some sucker is slam dancing with a knife," she said. At some point the band stopped playing and pointed out the jackass cutting people, and the crowd descended on this guy and beat the crap out of him in the alley. We had a friend named Kathy who was kind of quiet but always hung out with us. Kathy had a very unique skill. She had a sixth sense to when a party was about to go really bad. She would get this far away look on her face, then snap back to reality and announce it was time to go. And we did. You listened to whatever Kathy's voices told her, and that night, in the middle of a conversation, she got that look, and we went, "Ayo, cops are coming," she said. Every one of us in our group was under 17. I was 13. Everything was stupid illegal, so we got the heck out of there. We packed into the Oldsmobile station wagon we arrived in, and as we were pulling out onto the main road, a fleet of cop cars turned into the parking lot and blocked anyone from leaving. We missed being blocked in by maybe 10 seconds. No idea what happened to the people we left behind after that. I arrived home like nothing had happened. I'm imagining your friend Kathy being bit by a radioactive spider that partied a ton and had a little mini beer in one hand. Wandering through the rainy streets of Dundee, me and a friend were making our way back home after a local music gig. We started getting abuse from strangers across the road, but we thought nothing of it. It was about 10 minutes later when we were cutting across a park that we seen two of them following us. I said to my friend, "When they get a little closer, turn round and let's crash them." At this point I noticed a swarm of teenagers flanking us with rocks, poles, bottles and belts in hand. We looked at each other, nodded and just freaking ran for the hills. My luck was out as my friend was a lot faster than me and the crowd came roaring after me. I evaded them by throwing myself into a garden and I peeked from the bushes as they all tore past. TLDR. Got followed by two guys. Decided to fight them but stopped short as we noticed a large group of their armed friends flanking us. Decided silently together to leg it instead. The other day my friend and I were skating a bank at 2 AM because we were both depressed and wanted to ease our minds. We start looking around the bank out of boredom and notice a metal ladder on the backside. So we climb it and gain access to the very plain and boring roof. We were walking around looking to see if we could skate the gap between buildings when I noticed a cop car across the street. As soon as I looked at the car, I noticed the cop had just shut the door, picked up his radio in a panic, and was staring at us. I look at my friend. Both of us are dressed in black shirts, jeans, and tell him, oh crap, the cops saw us. We have GTFO now. My friend, being a little slow to react, asked what's the big deal, dumbass. We're dressed in all black hanging out on top of a bank roof at 2 AM. They think we're robbing the place. Him and I hit the floor, prone crawl to the ladder. I rip my shirt on a metal snag on the way down, and we run to the car like we're on fire. As soon as we're a block away, we hear like 20,000 police sirens go off behind us in the direction of the bank. My friend and I just maintained a poker face on the drive home. It was maybe 1.52 years ago. A friend of mine who is a former cop, let go for stealing out of the evidence locker, was back in town for a bit to see friends. This guy knows everyone. He had a hotel room given to him no charge by a friend who's the AM at the hotel because it wasn't being used for the weekend. We went out to go dong around and find something to do. In the process of the night we end up meeting with this girl we sort of knew who's a stripper, who ends up tagging along. A homeless guy, these two lesbian chicks. One was gorgeous, the other, no so much. We're eventually at the pool at his hotel. We get kicked out of the pool for being too loud, and the girls were topless. We weren't complaining obviously, so we head back up to the room. The ugly one of the two lesbians strips naked, goes on the balcony and positions herself in such a way to where she pisses on the people down below who she decided must have been the ones who were bitching. Cops get called, and my friend's phone rings. It's a friend of his who still works for the police department warning him that they're coming to the hotel, and he figures if you have anything to do with it, I'm giving you a heads up. Everyone goes into panic mode. My friend opens up the bathroom door and there's all sorts of drug paraphernalia. My express was what the serious frick. So the girl, all three of them without hesitation start shoving little bags of drugs and assorted paraphernalia in their snatches. That's when I looked at my friend and said it's time we get the frick out of here. He agreed. We left, and the cops arrested the three girls. As we watched them taking the girls away, a pillow of white power shot out from the under the stripper's skirt. This, my friends, will be a day I never forget. TLDR. Hang out with ex-cop friend. Cops show up to hotel. Three girls hide drugs in cooches. We peace out. Cops arrest girls. Cloud of coke shoots out of one of their orifices on the way out. Pillow of white power shot out from under the stripper's skirt. That is one racist snatch. This happened to my aunt back in the 90s. She goes to a dance at a Mexican nightclub with a really close friend and they meet a cute nice guy who buys them drinks and such. He offers to drive them home and they accept. They tell the guy their address and after a few minutes they realize the guy is not going the right way, and my aunt, sitting in the passenger seat, calls him out and asks him where they are really going. At this point it gets terrifying as he tells them he is taking them to a vacant lot where he will rape them and mutilate their breasts and kill them. My aunt says at this point she realized she was too young to die, 17, and that she was not going to let it happen. So she opens the car door while the perp is driving and attempts to jump out. The guy grabs her shirt and starts pulling her back in. So somehow she manages to loosen his grip and jump off. She rolls on the street and the guy shuts the car door after slowing down and speeds off. After he probably realized it would be better to get away with one girl instead of two. My aunt runs as fast as she can to the Closserby houses and starts knocking at all the doors. At 2-3ish in the morning, nobody answers until an old lady opened the door and offered my aunt shelter. My aunt calls the Mexican police and they tell her they can't do anything about it until family reports the other girl missing. The next week the girl was found dead at a vacant lot. That story taught me to stay the heck away from strangers and never leave with a stranger from a party, especially at another country. That is because the cops are all too busy winning the war on drugs. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.